they all said, looking at Mugglewump. Aha, said Mugglewump. Now for the fun. Now for the greatest upside-down trick of all time. Are you ready? We are ready, said the monkeys. We're ready, said the birds. Pull out the carpet, shouted Mugglewump. Pull this huge carpet out from under all the furniture and stick it to the ceiling. Onto the ceiling? Cried the small monkey. But that's impossible, Dad. I'll stick you on the ceiling if you don't zip it, snapped Mugglewump. He's Dotty, they cried. He's barmy, batty, nutty, screwy, wacky. Poor old Mugglewump's gone off his wump at last. Oh, do stop shouting and give me a hand, said Mugglewump, catching hold of the corner of the carpet. Pull, everyone, pull! The carpet was enormous. It covered the entire floor from wall to wall. It had red and gold pattern all over it. Now, it's not easy to pull an enormous carpet off the floor when the room is full of tables and chairs. Pull! Yelled Mugglewump. Pull, pull, pull! He was like a demon, hopping around the room and telling everyone what to do. But you couldn't blame him. After months and months of standing on his head with his family, he couldn't wait for the time when the terrible Twits would be doing the same thing. At least that's what he hoped. With the monkeys and the birds all pulling and puffing, the carpet was eventually dragged off the floor. And they hoisted it up to the ceiling, and there it stuck. All at once, the whole ceiling of the living room was carpeted in red and gold. Now the big table, shouted Mugglewump. Turn the table upside down and put a dollop of sticky glue on the bottom of each of the legs, and we'll stick that on the ceiling too. Hoisting the huge table upside down onto the ceiling was not an easy job, but they managed it in the end. Will it stay there, they cried. Is the glue strong enough? It's the strongest glue in the world, Mugglewump replied. It's for special bird-catching, bird-killing glue for smearing on trees. Please, said the roly-poly bird, I have asked you before not to mention that subject. How would you like it if it was monkey pie they made every Wednesday and all your friends had been boiled up? Oh, I do beg your pardon, said Mugglewump. I'm so excited I hardly know what I'm saying. Now, all the chairs must be stuck upside down too on the ceiling. Come on now. And the birds helped stick all the chairs upside down on the ceiling next to the table. Oh, do hurry up, everybody. Any moment now, those two filthy freaks are going to come rushing back with their guns. The monkeys, with the birds helping them, put glue on the bottom of each chair leg and hoisted them up to the ceiling. Now the smaller tables, shouted Mugglewump, and the big sofa, and the sideboard, and the lamps, and all the tiny little things, the ashtrays, the ornaments, and that beastly plastic gnome on the sideboard, everything, absolutely everything must be stuck to the ceiling. It was terribly hard work. It was especially difficult to stick everything on the ceiling in exactly its right place, but they got it done in the end. What now? Asked the roly-poly bird. He was out of breath and so tired he could hardly flap his wings. Now the pictures, cried Mugglewump. Turn all the pictures upside down, and will one of you birds please fly out onto the road and watch when those frumptuous freaks are back? I'll go, said Roly-Poly Bird. I'll sit on the telephone wires and keep guard. It'll give me a rest. They had only just finished the job when the roly-poly bird came swooping in, screaming, "They're coming back! They're coming back!" Quickly, the birds flew back onto the roof of the house. The monkeys rushed to their cage and stood upside down on top of one another. And a moment later, Mr. and Mrs. Twit came marching into the garden, each carrying a fearsome-looking gun. "I'm glad to see those monkeys are still upside down," said Mr. Twit. "They're looking too stupid to do anything else," Mrs. Twit said. "Hey, look at all those cheeky birds still up there on the roof. Let's go inside and load our lovely new guns, and then it'll be bang, 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 bird pie for supper." Just as Mr. and Mrs. Twit were about to enter the house, two black ravens swooped low over their heads. Each bird carried a paintbrush in its claw, and each paintbrush was smeared with sticky glue. As the ravens whizzed over, they brushed a streak of sticky glue onto the tops of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's heads. They did it with the lightest touch, but even so, the Twits noticed. "What was that?" said Mrs. Twit. "Some beastly bird has dropped his dirty droppings on my head." "On mine too," shouted Mr. Twit. I felt it, I did." "Don't touch it," cried Mrs. Twit. "You'll get all over your hands. Now come inside and we'll wash it off at the sink." "The filthy, dirty brutes," yelled Mr. Twit. "I'll bet you they did it on purpose. Just wait till I've loaded my gun." Mrs. Twit got the key from under the doormat where Mugglewump had cleverly replaced it, and into the house they went. "What's this?" gasped Mrs. Twit as they entered the living room. "What's happened?" screamed Mr. Twit. They stood in the middle of the room looking. All the furniture, the big table, the chairs, the sofa, the lamps, the side tables, the cabinet with the bottles of beers in it, the ornaments, the electric fire, the carpet, everything was stuck upside down to the ceiling. The pictures were upside down on the walls. The floor they were standing on was absolutely bare. What's more, it had been painted white to look like the ceiling. "Look!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "That's the floor! The floor's up there! This is the ceiling! We're standing on the ceiling!" "We're upside down!" gasped Mr. Twit. "We must be upside down! We're standing on the ceiling looking at the floor!" "Oh, help!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "Help, help, help! I feel so giddy!" So do I, said Mr. Twit. "I don't like it one little bit." "We're upside down and all the blood's going to my head," screamed Mrs. Twit. "If we don't do something quickly, I shall die! I know I shall!" "I've got it!" cried Mr. Twit. "I know what we'll do. We'll stand on our heads, and anyway, we'll be the right way up." So they stood on their heads. And of course, the moment the tops of their heads touched the floor, the sticky glue that the ravens had brushed on it just a few moments before did its job. They were stuck. They were pinned, cemented, glued, fixed to the floorboards. Through a crack in the door, the monkeys watched. They jumped right out of their cage the moment the Twits had gone inside. And the roly-poly bird watched too. And all the other birds flew in and out to catch a glimpse of this extraordinary sight. That evening, Mugglewump and his family went up the big wood on top of the hill and into the tallest house. They built a marvellous tree house. All the birds, especially the big ones, the crows and the rooks and the magpies, they all made their nests around the house so nobody could see it from the ground. "You can't stay up here forever, you know," the roly-poly said. "Well, why not?" asked Mugglewump. "It's a lovely place. Look how lovely their house is." "Just wait till the winter comes," said the roly-poly bird. "Monkeys don't like cold weather, do they?" "They most certainly don't," cried Mugglewump. "Oh, the winter's very cold over here." "It's ice and snow," said the roly-poly bird. "Sometimes it's so cold a bird will wake up in the morning with his feet frozen to the bough of the tree he's roosting in." "What are we going to do?" cried Mugglewump. "My family will all be deep-freezed." No, they won't," said the roly-poly bird, "because when the first leaves start falling from the trees in autumn, you can all fly home to Africa with me." "Oh, don't be ridiculous," Mugglewump said. "Monkeys can't fly." "You can sit on my back," said the roly-poly bird. "I shall take you one at a time. You will travel by the roly-poly superjet, and it won't cost you a penny." And down here in the horrid house, Mr. and Mrs. Twit are still stuck upside down to the floor of the living room. "It's all your fault," yelled Mr. Twit, thrashing his legs in the air. "You're the one, you horrible old woman, who went up and around shouting, 'We're upside down! We're upside down!'" "Well, you're the one who said to stand on our heads so we'd be the right way up, you whiskery old warthog," screamed Mrs. Twit. "Now we'll never get free. We're stuck here forever." "You may be stuck here forever," Mr. Twit said, "but not me. I'm going to get away." Mr. Twit wiggled and squirmed and squealed and wormed and twisted and turned and clogged and chogged and churned, but the sticky glue held him tight, just as tightly as it had held the poor birds to the tree. He was still upside down as ever, standing on his head. The head's not meant to be stood upon. If you stand on your head for a very long time, a horrid thing happens, and this is where Mr. Twit got his biggest shock of all. With so much weight on his head from above, his head began to get squashed into his body. Quite soon it had disappeared completely, sunk out of sight into the fatty folds of his flabby neck. "I'm shrinking," burbled Mr. Twit. "So am I," called Mrs. Twit. "Help me, save me, call a doctor," yelled Mr. Twit. "I'm getting the dreaded shrinks." And so he was. Mrs. Twit was getting the dreaded shrinks too, and this time it wasn't fake, it was actually the real thing. Their heads shrank into their necks, and then their necks shrank into their bodies, and their bodies shrank into their legs, and their legs shrank into their feet. And 1 week later, on a nice sunny afternoon, a man called Fred came round to read the gas meter. When nobody answered the door, Fred peeped into the house, and there he saw on the floor of the living room 2 bundles of clothes, 2 pairs of shoes, and a walking stick. There was nothing more left in the world of Mr. and Mrs. Twit. And everyone, including Fred, shouted, "Hooray!" And there is all that's left of them. And can you believe it? We've done it. We've read the whole story of the Twits this week. We've read about the horrible Mr. and Mrs. Twit and how mean they were to the monkeys and how they caught all those birds for bird pie. We learned all about all their tricks that they played on each other. I really, really liked the walking stick one. That was really clever. And we learned about clever old Mugglewump and his family and all the birds getting their own back on Mr. and Mrs. Twit. And that was the end of Mr. and Mrs. Twit. They will not be unkind to anybody ever again. They got what they deserved, didn't they? Do you agree? I really hope you enjoyed that story. One of my absolute favourite Roald Dahl stories. A lot of fun, some silliness, and some lessons to be learned. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you for another story on Monday. Bye.